the edge. Feel like I'm floating through the air. The pain I felt is paid for, all is said and done. Oh, I am restricted, fixed upon the web. I need to kick the habit that my mind is breathing in. Break out, I've got to see. Spent all my life holding all of it closely. I played it innocent, a feel of discontent. I'm finally facing it all, fearless. Burning the bridge that keeps us. I'm here and I'm feeling exaggerated, that's what you assume. The story's over now, I must conclude. I am conflicted, watching where I step still, hanging in the balance. Not the life I want to live, I want to take it all. Standing tall, fear I weighed the person you are. Oh, break out, I've got to see. Spent all my life holding all of it closely. I played it innocent, a feel of discontent. I'm finally facing it all, fearless.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Golden Show here on the Blue Podcast. Today, it is only me and George, the two best people on the Blue Podcast, and today we're here to basically do what we'll be doing over the next 12-ish months. We'll be just talking about the Premier, about all the leagues, and basically in Europe, because who cares about like the Brazilian league? Well, that's where I'm just first going anyway. So yeah, that's pretty much what we're going to be doing over the next course of weeks. Please let us know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think about what we speak about? Obviously, I know some people. I actually was speaking to someone who actually says that George is very much trying what he says about Ollie. So you're not the only one, George. You'll be happy to hear. You're aligned with a few other people. But how are you doing this evening?
Very good, Josh. Yep, excited to be back again. As you said, the two of us once again to deliver our thoughts about the world of football, and as you said, in particular European football over the next 12 months. And yeah, really excited to delve into it.
So let's start off. We'll start off with the Premier League, obviously the best league in the world. What I said, we're going to preview the next set of games come up, and we'll kind of talk about the previous 50 games to kind of that. So it kind of gives us a good thing to preview. So we'll start off with obviously your beloved club, Manchester United, coming up against Southampton at St Mary's Park. It is at 4 o'clock on the Sunday. No, it's like 2 o'clock on the Sunday. It's on Sky Sports if anybody's interested. Any worries about Southampton? You know, Southampton are a good team. They press well, they attack well, but again, very similar to Leeds. You'd be looking at their defence and be licking your lips. Maybe another 5 goals for Manchester United, maybe, St Mary's.
I think it's always difficult. I think you can never in the Premier League, as you sort of spoke about, the best league in the world, with certainly the most competitive. You can never say that any game is straightforward. However, we do have a very good record against Southampton. Admittedly, last season, as we remember, they did give us quite a large scare. We had to come back from 2-0 down, which was through some Cavani-inspired second half. But I think the two teams are in a have got differing fortunes. Obviously, Jadon Sancho and Rafael Varane will probably be making their first, hopefully for Jadon Sancho his first start, because obviously he did come on as a substitute against Leeds, and Rafael Varane, who was unveiled against Leeds, will hopefully be starting instead of Victor Lindelof. So I think our team, on paper it should be a formality, but like I said, you can never truly see it as an easy 3 points. But I am expecting 3 points, and yeah, that's exactly what these players need to deliver if they've got serious aspirations of winning the title this season.
No, that's very good. I have to ask about the Manchester United personnel. So obviously, McFred still started, Lindelof and Maguire still started, Dan James was on the right. Now, obviously, James on the right is a bit of a... Dan James on the right isn't too much of a worry in terms of, obviously, you've got Jadon Sancho, but if Sancho gets injured or Sancho can't play every single game, do you think there's a bit of an element of... are you okay with McFred starting if they play like that, like they did against Leeds? And are you slightly concerned about if, as I say, Sancho gets hurt, who do you play on that right-hand side?
So I'm never okay with McFred. They played very well against Leeds, but to be honest with you, they played, if we recollect again, speaking of last season in the home match against Leeds that time, McTominay and Fred played very well that match as well. And I think sometimes in the modern football, at least on Twitter, they are, it can be people can be quite reactionary. And almost instantaneously after a good game, they're sort of being their bosses and definitely the answer. But I know better. I've seen them over far too many games playing terribly. So for me, we are still being linked tentatively at the moment, but hopefully the links firm up for a CDM. Chouameni has been mentioned, obviously, of Monaco. I'm not sure if there's been any further news today.
For Brazil confirmed, nothing, absolutely nothing between the two clubs.
Well, there we go then. Hopefully, like I said, there is going to be something, because we do need someone in there instead of McTominay and Fred. So it remains to be seen whether that's going to be done over the next week and 3/4. And yeah, as I said, in terms of the right wing, I do think Dan James will get more limited game time, because what I think might happen is that when Jadon Sancho does get injured, I think we might see Greenwood playing more on the right again, because obviously Cavani's still to come back, and I do feel like he's the preferred option of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer in the centre forward berth. So I don't think we'll see too much of Dan James this season, and I'm quite hopeful of that, because I think based on his performance against Leeds, it's for the better if he doesn't play as much.
I do want to ask you, because obviously I said this on the World of Football podcast on Monday. I still find it beggar belief how Dan James is still getting chances beyond chances, but Diallo he gets the meaningless minutes. This is a guy who came in very highly rated. He's doing it for the under-23s. He did it in the senior team when called upon on the rare occasion. Like, why isn't Dan James just being told to get out and give Diallo, who clearly has potential, the opportunity to keep going?
I'm not sure at all. I mean, ultimately, what I would say is, though, that potentially there's been a conversation with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer where he's been told to that Dan James was his signing. And there's a bit of sort of a thing where he's like, well, I signed him, so you signed him, so you've got to utilise him, and he doesn't. As we've seen with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, he doesn't necessarily learn from his mistakes, and he likes to be proven right. He's quite stubborn, so I think there might be a case of that with Dan James, where he's trying to play him to prove that he was right in that regard. Also, of course, there have been rumours as well that Dan James, we've been trying to palm off Dan James. I think last January was when the strongest links were to try and get rid of him to Leeds, at that juncture. But unfortunately, at the moment, it doesn't look likely that we'll get rid of him. He is a useful player in certain aspects, but I feel like the club aren't doing enough to help him with his psychological issues. And what I mean by that is his confidence. I think he's got a real lack of confidence, and someone needs to sort of really properly reason with him and get him playing a bit like he does for Wales, with slightly more abandon and less pressure on him, because I feel like he feels the pressure too much, and that was certainly evidence against Leeds. And then finally, speaking of Ahmad, I'm a massive fan of him, as you spoke about. I mean, I've seen him, briefly in the senior team. He scored a stunning goal against, almost the best goalkeeper in the world elect in Donnarumma in the Europa League with a flicked header. And, you just have to watch Ahmad to know that he's going to be a quality player. The close ball control, the vision, the decision making is all exemplary for someone of his age. So, it's frustrating that we're not going to see Ahmad this season. He's probably, not going to be here. But I'm hopeful that eventually he's going to get his chance. And as for Dan James, like I said, if he is going to stay here, someone does need to have a word with him to really iron out the confidence issues that are clearly evident at the moment.
Okay, that's fair enough. In terms of Paul Pogba, now obviously Paul Pogba. Now I think Paul Pogba's attitude at Manchester United has been it's a flip flop. I think a way to describe it. He'll either go out and play his heart and soul and be incredible, like he did against Leeds with the 4 assists he got against Leeds, 4. And then there's just some games like the Europa League final where he just did not look particularly good whatsoever. Obviously, he leaves for free at the end of the season if he doesn't sign a contract. If I'm not wrong, and he wants a lot of money to stay. Do you think that he deserves that money, or would you be better letting him walk?
So it's probably slightly foolish to ask me this question compared to because in terms of the pendulum or the spread of Manchester United fans on Paul Pogba, I'm very much in the pro Paul Pogba camp as one of his greatest fans. So I would give him the money because, obviously he is my favourite player at Manchester United. In terms of, and also the other thing is, I feel like the widely accepted version that Pogba is inconsistent, I feel isn't correct. I think that Paul Pogba has been largely very good for us. I feel like the media, again, we don't want to go too far down this route already, but the media, and I think it's been particularly highlighted with what Graham Souness said about Paul Pogba and the way that Sky Sports have allowed his bile to be propagated for the last few years, showing that they clearly no one's had a word with Souness about tempering it. So they must be okay with it. I feel like there has been a wide media agenda against Paul Pogba, and this has led to this sort of inconsistent label because they're sort of expecting Paul Pogba, as Graham Souness said, obviously the 4 assists, that's what you expect from a 100 million man. Now, to be fair, that was sort of slightly tongue in cheek and a bit hyperbolic, but that does tend to be what the media and some fans expect from him. Whereas Paul Pogba has mostly been playing. If you look at his last, 100 games or so, he's mostly been playing in the pivot role. We have seen him, on the wings, and obviously when he's on a wing or two, you do expect some assists and goals, which we saw obviously on Saturday. And you have seen in the past as well when I thought he was, particularly brilliant against Tottenham Hotspur as well, playing on the left wing. But ultimately, like I said, Paul Pogba has mostly been in the anchor role. As we know, he's, people will, who are watching will say, well, he has played in the left wing a lot. He actually hasn't. And the reason he hasn't is because Ole Gunnar Solskjaer likes to run Marcus Rashford into the absolute ground and play him through about 50 injuries. And Rashford was one of the 4 players with most minutes in Europe last season. So, yeah, as I said, Paul Pogba's mostly playing the pivot and they're still expecting him to generate as many assists and goals as possible. So, as I said, it's slightly, foolish in my view. And as I said, I would give Paul Pogba the money because I think, by and large, and I won't go into too great a detail because I'll be here for hours with me proving it over every season how well Paul Pogba has played for us. But I think, he has been very good for us, and I think he does deserve the money ultimately. I've just seen this thing. This has just been reported now that Aaron Wan-Bissaka has officially been charged for disqualified driving with his Lamborghini without an insurance or a license. And apparently he could face up to 6 months in prison, but we all know footballers get away. Classic. What does football Twitter do? Bruno will take the penalty. I just went off for that. In terms of Southampton, right? Let's think about Southampton. Yeah.
Right. Southampton under Russ, when Hasenhüttl came in, they looked a really, really good team. Obviously, they've lost 9-0 twice, once to you guys, which they go to 10 men, which was quite hard. They try and press up the front. They're a good attacking team. They've had some really, really good form under Hasenhüttl, but obviously this back into last season they lost more than 60% of their games. Let's see, like Everton, the first half they started really well, but it showed in the second half they're struggling with pressure. Adam Armstrong, he looks a decent player, but he's no Danny Ings. And losing Vestergaard's a big loss for them. They've got a young kid who's from Chelsea at right back. What do you think of Southampton? Do you think that they're in a relegation fight, or do you think they? It's a tough one because Hasenhüttl's a good manager, but he doesn't have the squad to match it, and you feel for him, don't you?
Yeah, I feel like Southampton, are one of those clubs where, ultimately they are a selling club. It seems like almost every year they do lose, their best players. Danny Ings obviously was one of those sales that came almost out of nowhere. Even obviously you spoke about Fabrizio Romano, who's ultimately probably the best source in terms of for transfer news, who didn't even report on it. It's literally done within in a couple of hours that Danny Ings was literally sold to Villa. But yeah, as I said, I think with Southampton, they've really got to stop the rot and probably properly invest for Hasenhüttl, because as you said, he is a good manager, but the squad is severely lacking. I don't necessarily see too much of a relegation battle, but I think their days. I remember not so long ago where they were knocking on the door of Europe. They were sort of in the top half of the table quite often, but sadly hemorrhaging, losing your key players that often, you just can't, and not replacing them, eventually you're going to suffer. So I do see them probably, in my book, in the bottom half of the table, but I don't necessarily see a relegation fight. But given my first impressions, and again, remember, guys who are watching, this is only after one game, so it's very difficult to make an overall summation. But I think Brentford, who I'm sure we're going to get onto at some point, just in a sentence or two, looked very good. I mean, admittedly, it is Arsenal, but I think they looked very, very good. And so, they were one of my three, obviously with the three promoted sides, were three of my three selections to go down. And if Brentford, aren't in there, Southampton could well be one of the clubs that are, moving towards that the championship.
That's very well. I like Southampton a lot. I like Hasenhüttl a lot. Obviously, they've got they've got a right back from us, and then they've got a striker on loan from us. I like the way they play. I really like the way Hasenhüttl sets up. I like him as a character, but I feel like the Southampton board haven't done him much justice. And the players that they've sold, it seems like there's not much. They're not backing them too much with money, so you feel for the guy. I just hope he doesn't get sacked. I really don't. He doesn't deserve it. Moving on to my club, Chelsea. We kick off against Arsenal 4:30 on Sunday at the Emirates. George, you've already spoken about Arsenal. I know Arsenal are Arsenal. They're a banter club. Arteta's worse than Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, but they're always turn up against us, man. They always turn up against us. They are going to be missing, like you said, Aubameyang. Aaron Ramsdale could start. Lukaku could start for us. So the positive is swinging Chelsea's ways, but our form at the Emirates over the past few years is diabolical. Our form against Arsenal in the last 4 years is diabolical. What do you think? Do you think this could be that classic situation where Arsenal are going to turn up again, or do you think Chelsea are going to maybe steamroll them?
I think, on paper, you'd have to say it's Chelsea's game because Chelsea do have by far a better team. Obviously, a much better manager. Everyone who's watched this show for a long time knows that I'm a massive fan of Thomas Tuchel. But as you spoke about Arsenal as sort of the bogey team for Chelsea, it always seems like and particularly as you said, the Emirates. It seems like over the past few years, Arsenal have always done a number on Chelsea, even if no matter how bad Arsenal are playing beforehand, and how well Chelsea are playing, it always seems like Arsenal will somehow grapple a win out of nowhere. I remember as well, of course, in the last few games when you were chasing top four of the season or whatever, that disgusting play by Jorginho that led to Arsenal, and that was when Arsenal really were, again, because it feels like they're on a downward spiral. That was really when you were really anticipating a Chelsea victory, but somehow in these sort of games, I could definitely see Arsenal winning this. But I do feel like, actually, I will go. It's hard for me because I really want Chelsea to lose, obviously, because you guys are one of our rivals for the title, and Arsenal obviously aren't. So I don't really care if they get 3 points. But I do feel like Chelsea will win because I feel like Arsenal have, as you spoke about, no Lacazette, no Aubameyang. Arsenal are struggling for goals as well at the moment, really, really badly in pre-season and obviously against Brentford. They have all the possession, but they just can't carve out genuine chances. And even if they do, there's no finisher. There's no proven goal scorer to score them. So I think the game is there for Chelsea to take. And also, as well as you spoke about, Lukaku will be available. I take it.
He's going to be a fail, but we just don't know if he's going to start or not.
If Lukaku starts, I think he'll win. I've got mixed feelings about Lukaku. I don't want to speak too disparagingly about him because after his heroics for us against Paris Saint-Germain in the night in Paris, I swore I never would again because of how much what a hero he was that night. But I feel like he's going to cause serious problems for that Arsenal defence because if there's one thing Lukaku is, it's incredibly powerful and strong, and against a very weak, as Jamie Carragher said, weak defending from Arsenal in that second goal against Brentford. I feel like Lukaku's going to cause some absolute carnage in that back line. So I do feel like Chelsea will win, but obviously, from a heart point of view, I want Arsenal to win.
That's fair enough answer. In terms of, I'll come back to us briefly, but see Arsenal, I have to ask you, right? 35 million for Aaron Ramsdale, who suffered 2 relegations in the past 2 seasons. And then Ben White for 50 million, he got turned inside out by the Brentford attackers. What is Arsenal's transfer policy? Like, generally, I'm seriously, even Odegaard, he's not even that good.
I can't believe, I think, Arsenal have now spent, 135 million or something in that region throughout the entire window. And they've, I think it really is a case of a bit with, and that's what we struggled with as well, and that's what we tried to with Van Gaal when we had quite a large summer of bringing in lots of players, where you always want, I feel like, unless you've got lots of money like Chelsea or Man City to spend, you always want quality over quantity, and with Arsenal it's always quantity over quality. And they've got a terrible record with centre backs, particularly over the last few years. I mean, you could just name them off the sort of like Mustafi, Socrates, Rob Holding, Ben White. Now there's probably another 2 or 3 that I've not even thought of. I haven't got the list in front of me, but Arsenal's record with centre backs is absolutely terrible. And then as you spoke about sort of Ramsdale as a goalkeeper, again we've had in the past, everyone's sort of, Arsenal fans have been bigging up Bernd Leno, but he's absolutely terrible. Arsenal have just got such, Arsenal have got a lot of bad players, unfortunately for them, and they do need a massive clear out. But with the takeover from Daniel Ek not looking likely in the near future, I think it's going to be down and down for Arsenal. And I feel like Arteta is going to be the ultimately the man who's going to get the sack this season. Because again, I feel like Arsenal are going to start drifting badly. Unless they can get Aubameyang back in some sort of goal scoring form, because if you can't score, unfortunately you're going to be marooned near the bottom of the table. And ultimately as well, I think defensively they're shocking.
That's fair enough. Let's move on to your club. I think you hate this club with a passion, which is obviously Liverpool Football Club. I'm surprised you haven't argued. I'm surprised you haven't told Doug to do one because he's a Liverpool supporter. But Liverpool, right? Okay, let's be fair. Except for Liverpool fans, because they're Liverpool fans, not many people have Liverpool as a title challenging team this season. A lot of people have them 3rd and 4th. I have them 3rd myself. Are Liverpool being, from taking your United colours out of you, do you think Liverpool are being overlooked here? They looked really, I know it's Norwich, but they still have one of the best. They still have an incredible front three with Diego Jota in there. If Van Dijk gets back to his full form, Anfield back with their full capacity will be a tough. Will probably have the best winning percentage, home win record in this league. Are Liverpool being overlooked as title challengers for this Premier League?
So they are, but only in the sense. So what I would say is a bit like, I think we had Ben on, didn't we, when we were doing the sort of predictions for the
Yes.
table, whatever, and he sort of said that the top four, the big four, sort of Liverpool, Chelsea, Man City, and United, they could be in any order. So I wouldn't necessarily obviously from our sort of point of view, I don't think they're necessarily being overlooked because I just feel like the top four will be those four teams, and they'll just be in any sort of, I don't necessarily know the order. Obviously, I predicted a certain order, but those four. So like I said, all four of those for me are title contenders. Even yourselves, obviously Chelsea, as well as Man City and Liverpool, and obviously myself, my own club, United. One of those four teams will win the Premier League. The other 16 teams have, probably a 0.001% chance of winning the league. Obviously, Leicester have proven that it can be done, but yeah, I think Liverpool are definitely title contenders. As you spoke about, they do have the Anfield crowd back. They have, that has proved a fortress for them. It remains to be seen, though, whether all the losses that they took last season without fans, whether psychologically that might have a good impact for other clubs coming there. Because they have won. A lot of them now have won there, so they do know what it now takes to beat Liverpool. And the other thing I would say about Liverpool is they have to keep their players fit because, as we saw last season, their squad's paper thin. Beyond that first 11 almost can compete with anyone, as we know, when they won the title. But when they go past that, some of that squad is very lacking in quality and depth, and that's obviously where United, Chelsea, and City have got them all ends up beaten. But as I said, as long as they're lucky with injuries, they can then compete. Klopp's, a phenomenal manager. And as you spoke about the sort of home record, we know they can also go on big runs. From my other point of view, though, there is a case of lack of investment from the owners. They invested big in order to win the title in the Champions League, with Alisson and Van Dijk, both massive money signings, but there doesn't seem to be the same appetite to do that nowadays compared to, if we look at the transfer business this summer, for example. I think Conor is the only one that they've signed, isn't it? Mm-hmm. I don't know if they've, and he was pretty cheap. Whereas, if you compare that to obviously Lukaku for almost 100 million, Sancho and Varane, and then Grealish for City, you can see that, and I've always been quite a large advocate or big advocate of paying to win. Because I feel like football is one of those things, like most games and sports, where it is almost like that. And I think Liverpool are in danger of being left behind because there isn't that investment. But on paper, they do have a good, good team and good squad. And the final thing I would say is that how good will Van Dijk now be coming back from his injury? And not only that, but this club, this team is, and I thought this even a couple of years or so ago, the average age of this team and a lot of their players are quite, obviously, if you don't bring players in and get rid of them like other clubs do, the average age goes up of the team, and there's a case of where they might be slightly over the hill. And that's what I feel like with Liverpool, and that's why I had them fourth. But ultimately, they could win the title. They are one of the four teams that might have a chance of doing it. But I can't see it myself. But ask me maybe in a few months' time when we've had some more of the season and whether what's happening.
Look at Manchester City. No, they looked awful against Spurs, like truly bad. Is it a case for Man City? Is it a case that maybe this team is just starting to lose a bit of that mentality? Trying to play the way they have done for so long. Maybe it comes to a point where we've seen it with a lot of managers: Arsene Wenger, Pochettino, Jose Mourinho. It's something that only lasts for so long. Are we starting to see maybe Pep Guardiola's team starting to just become a bit tired of playing this way? Is people starting to figure out Pep Guardiola, or is it as simple as they just need Harry Kane to become the team they were? Because the last few weeks they have not looked like Manchester City.
It's probably to be fair to Man City, they did start terribly last season as well, and that was a bit like with the case of Manchester United, where there was a lack of fitness, with the COVID and a bit of lethargy. And I think also as well, even with a squad as large as Man City's, you will still see that, because I think Pep doesn't necessarily use his wider squad as much as he could. Nathan Ake, as we've seen in recent times, and Benjamin Mendy, there's probably a reason why they're not. If we look back at last season, for example, it's probably a reason why they weren't, were hardly in it at all, or didn't figure. And now I think with players coming back from the Euros and from late holidays and stuff like that, I feel like Pep's had to rely on an even wider squad than he otherwise would have done. And those particular replacements or fringe players are very poor. And I feel like Harry Kane will make them a much more formidable outfit, because ultimately they don't have a proven goal scorer in that side at the moment. And I feel like with Man City, they are a team that can turn it on instantaneously. So they can be on a horrible slump, such as you might, for their standards, they kind of are now, and then they can suddenly go on a massive winning streak. I mean, we saw that last season when they went on, a sort of unbelievable winning streak in the league, and took it away from any other club. We saw that also a few years ago when they had to chase down Liverpool, and again went on a horrendously long winning streak. So I think with Man City, we're for all rivals, which is obviously yourself and me as well as other people, we all want Man City and Pep Guardiola's magic to have faded, but I wouldn't say it has yet. Hopefully, again, we're going to see, from my point of view, we're going to see some, the form really getting bad and a lot more losses.
I would absolutely love that if it happened. I would be over the moon. But the thing about Manchester City is, it's just they've got too good of a squad to ever fail. So the depth and positions: Kevin De Bruyne, Gundogan, Robbie, Fernandinho, Phil Foden, Jesus is awful, but he's still up there. Sterling, Mahrez, Bernardo Silva, Jack Grealish. It's insane. Here's a question about Pep Guardiola, and this is a debate that I see all the time, because obviously some people say, especially Sir Alex Ferguson, which obviously massively disagree. Can Pep Guardiola do it without money? You think about the clubs he's been to: Bayern Munich, Barcelona, Man City, all clubs that have been able to back him to the high heavens, or he had Messi at Barcelona. Could he go to an Arsenal or a Spurs where he's not backed and do the same job?
No. I think one of the things I would give Pep Guardiola credit for is I think he's quite honest. A lot of the time, he is honest in certain respects. So a lot of the things I hear him say about it, I do agree with. So, for example, when he was asked about what the secret was for Manchester City's success, he said, "We have all the money to buy the best players." So I think he's incredibly honest about what his limitations are. I feel like he knows that the quality of his squad and the money that has been utilised to make it, probably the best squad in Premier League history in terms of depth in every position. I think maybe at centre back is probably the only sort of weakness. Just thinking about Nathan Ake, but maybe left back as well. But obviously in terms of like wing position, centre midfield, they're absolutely festooned with quality players. And also as well, the other thing is, he hasn't won the Champions League since he left Barcelona, despite having all the money thrown at him. And again, when he's been quizzed about that, and he said, "What do you say to people who say that it was because you had Xavi, Iniesta, and Messi?" And he said, "Yes, you're quite right." So like I said, that's the thing I quite respect about Pep Guardiola, is that he does know that the players that he's been incredibly lucky to have, and he has done incredible things in football. But I've often thought with Pep Guardiola that he is not able to adapt in a way that Sir Alex Ferguson. I mean, obviously Sir Alex Ferguson is very, very clear in my view from Pep Guardiola, and one of the main reasons for that, not only obviously with the monetary situation, the fact that Sir Alex Ferguson was still able to challenge for and win titles despite the amount of money that was being spent, whilst he was having both his hands tied behind his back by the Glazers and their despicable ownership. for how many years was it? 8 years. Still reaching Champions League, still winning a Champions League, still reaching two other Champions League finals, and so forth. But it's that sort of resilience, and Sir Alex Ferguson, as we know, he probably had at least 5 great teams over his era, which no other manager can compete with. All those other managers have sort of had that period where they've either sort of faded into anonymity, a bit like Arsene Wenger when he was there for that long, or they get sacked, or in Pep Guardiola's case, they run for the hills when the going gets tough. I've seen, Pep Guardiola sort of ran for the hills with, from Barcelona when Real Madrid under Jose Mourinho won the league. He ran for the hills then. Then he went to Bayern Munich and couldn't win the Champions League, obviously, there as well. And, I think as well he had, Jurgen Klopp there as well. So it's with Dortmund, so he's running for the hills there as well. And I think with Man City as well, I really feel like eventually, whether that's going to be Thomas Tuchel, or Klopp, or maybe even hopefully for me, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is going to really, a team's going to really figure him out. I suspect he'll start running for the hills again. So that's the thing with Sir Alex Ferguson, is he stayed with United, and every time he was challenged by various, he had Arsene Wenger obviously in the late 90s and early noughties, and eventually saw him off. He had Jose Mourinho in the early 2000s and late 2000s, saw him off. He still had obviously Man City and their obviously their sort of oil revolution in 08 and up to 2013 still saw them off, and was incredibly unlucky on the goal difference obviously in 2012. If we'd had Paul Scholes, by the way, that season from the start of the season instead of midway, we'd have won that league by many points. So that's for me is the massive difference between Sir Alex Ferguson, and one of the main differences between them. So in answer to your original question, without money, Pep Guardiola could never have achieved what he has achieved, apart from at Barcelona, obviously, where admittedly he got incredibly lucky, having probably the best team in history.
Moving on to Brentford is the last time we're going to Premier League. I have I have Brentford finishing. I have Brentford finishing bottom of the league. So they look very good against Arsenal, and their atmosphere in that stadium was it was good. Are Brentford going to do a Sheffield United? Could we see them fighting top half of the league if they play like that? Are they going to struggle away from home? I know it's so hard to know after one game, but you could tell this is a team that's going to enjoy their time in the Premier League.
Ivan Toney, that's the first sort of time that I've really, sat down and watched him, and he was, bullying Arsenal defenders left and right. It looks like he's fully adapting to the Premier League. I feel like Brentford, it felt like they were fighting so incredibly hard, and hard work and determination and being well drilled and organised, as we saw. And obviously you've alluded to Sheffield United, that can really take you far in the Premier League. And Burnley are a testament to that by the fact they've stayed in the league so long with such limited finances. So yeah, I think anything's possible for Brentford. Fabulous win over Arsenal, and let's hope that they can continue that form. I think Frank, their manager, has proven already for me that he's a very good tactician. And as you spoke about, that atmosphere, when I was watching, was just incredible. It felt like the 12th man for Brentford. So I mean, to be honest with you, I predicted Brentford to come 18th, so I didn't have them too much higher than you did. But I feel like as it stands currently, that might have been too dismissive of Brentford's abilities, and they could certainly really have a concerted challenge to get higher in the table and really away from that relegation mire, because objective one for all three of these promoted sides ultimately is safety this season. And hopefully Brentford are going to do it, because I do really admire the way Brentford play. I think of all the three promoted sides, that is probably the club that I would, from a neutral's perspective, that's probably the club I would want to stay up of all three. But again, one game gone, 37 more. Who's to say? Who's to say as well? The other thing is, again, I'm not familiar too much with the depth of their squad. And I think that's what a lot of the newly promoted sides struggle with, is when the games start coming thick and fast, particularly among in the festive period where a lot of points can be won and lost. That it remains to be seen whether Brentford have the squad depth to continue to show the exhilarating form they did against Arsenal.
All right, so we're going to move on to next week. So we're going to move on to the MLS. I'm joking, don't worry. Do you know anything about the MLS? Because I'm absolutely clueless. So we're not talking about any MLS. Let's move on to La Liga. Basically, a league obviously not irrelevant anymore, but still. What do you make of Barcelona without Messi? I don't know. I think Robert Koeman's a terrible manager. They've got a very old back line. They've got Griezmann still in the wage books. Depay's looking okay. Depay's actually looking really good. To be fair, Depay seems like a good sign. Aguero's already injured before he kicked a competitive ball. What would you think if you're a Barcelona fan at the moment?
I think Barcelona fans will be in mourning for quite a few years, losing Lionel Messi, probably their best player in their history. Again, they'll be able to confirm that. But it's certainly one of them. Someone who broke records, someone who was a talisman for them, and someone who ultimately led, them to a real continued period of success, particularly in the league. If you look at the amount of league titles that Barcelona garnered during Messi's career compared to prior to it, you can really see the impact of having him had in terms of Barcelona's fortunes. So I think in terms of trophies, I feel like they're going to struggle again particularly against a sort of resurgent Atletico Madrid, who of course are the reigning champions from last season. And without his sort of goals and assists, I think they are going to struggle, because Martin Braithwaite, albeit having an exemplary performance at the weekend, I don't necessarily feel like that will be something that he will continue to do. Memphis Depay, I am a relative fan of him as well. I was quite impressed, particularly with what he did in the Euros for the Netherlands. I thought he was very, very good there, and that's probably going to be a good move. But Barcelona, I can't. It's difficult to say with La Liga, but I feel like it's going to be a few years now before they can really compete, especially with the financial situation that we've spoken about previously. It's going to be difficult for Barcelona, and again, as you spoke about, that aging back line. I feel like certainly not. Barcelona can say goodbye to the Champions League for the next few years at least. La Liga is slightly more different. I still think they'll be in that top three conversation with Atletico and Real Madrid, but I think they'll be sort of they will still struggle because Messi's irreplaceable ultimately.
If you're allowed to go, right, Real Madrid still have a decent team, right? But they've obviously lost Varane and Ramos, which is hugely bad. That's just huge. Their midfield is literally ancient, and their attack is meh. If you're Atletico Madrid and you don't win the La Liga this season, that is a massive disappointment, and the fans surely would be extreme. There's no reason why Atletico Madrid should be winning that league.
100%. I mean, I saw quite interestingly, in fact, I was briefly perusing Twitter before we went live, and Real Madrid were sort of trending about trying to get Mbappe and Haaland next summer, as well as who was the other one? I can't remember off the top of my head who the third one was, but Real Madrid were particularly adamant because obviously during the COVID period they've let go of a lot of their players. You've spoken about it as well, sort of Varane, Ramos. It's obviously Odegaard, people like that, and I don't think Real Madrid has spent a single penny over that period. So Real Madrid have been very careful with the finances, but in terms of this season, Atletico Madrid have got to be the favourites. They are the champions from last time. Real Madrid are 1 year older again. But what I would say is Real Madrid still do have Karim Benzema, who again at the weekend was phenomenal, and is a really top quality striker. When you've got his goals in there, I think Real Madrid will still be again. If I was to predict my order again, I think it will be Atletico, Real, then Barca as the top three in La Liga.
And then Barcelona fourth, Sevilla third.
I'm still again. I've got a feeling that Barcelona will still be in that top 3. But again, they could definitely fall out. But I still feel like, that pedigree sometimes. I think they'll sort of squirm into 3rd somehow. Again,
moving on to our next preview, we're going to talk about Salford City v Swinton Town. George, what do you think about this game?
So I think we'll win.
I was asked. A person asked us to talk about, but honestly, I'm sorry. We literally know nothing about League Two. I'm sorry. Let's see. Swinton Town. Let's see where they are. Well, Stafford City got 2 points out of 3 games, and Swinton Town have got 4 points out of 3 games. That's literally all I know about.
If that person wants us to, we can obviously delve into watching matches of those two sides. I think, but not at this juncture.
George would let you watch any football at humanly possible, as long as it's not during the United game. So we'll have to kindly move on. I think Stafford City's going to win. That's literally it. Moving on to the Bundesliga, obviously I don't know if you watched it, incredible game in the Super Cup between Borussia Dortmund and Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich winning 2-1. Incredibly, that was Nagelsmann's first ever win as Bayern Munich manager. He did win a pre-season friendly, and he obviously drew with Gladbach there at the weekend. I know it's very early signs, and I know the Euros come into play this, but George, there's something about this Bayern Munich team. There's a massive drop-off between Flick and Nagelsmann at the moment. They're looking like a completely different team. Does that come down to Nagelsmann maybe trying to change things? He's changed the system. He's went to a 3 at the back from the 4-2-3-1. Are people looking too much into this? Are people looking too much into this, or do you think there is maybe a genuine fact that maybe Nagelsmann is changing what was a working system for Bayern Munich?
I think he is, and it's it's going to be difficult for him to get things right straight away. I think even Thomas Tuchel took a little while with Chelsea to get things ticking over his way after Frank Lampard had left it in a bit of a state. So yeah, it's going to take a few. I think it's relatively too early to say, and I think maybe in a couple of months or so we'll know definitively. But Nagelsmann's a top coach. Someone that I've wanted to manage United when he was at Leipzig, and there was rumours of that, potentially of being replaced with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. But yeah, I think he's now got his first win under his belt, obviously a trophy, as well. But ultimately, Hansi Flick is an extremely hard, person to follow. Obviously the sextuplet that's only been done twice in history. The 6 trophies that he won in, admittedly COVID times, but still won 6 trophies, same as what Barcelona did, in 2009. So it's just a bit of a changing of the guard, but Bayern Munich still have a phenomenal set of players. Lewandowski, I know, there's been again rumours of him wanting a new challenge before the age of 35. And Bayern Munich have slapped over 100 million at least on his value. But for me, you have to take age into consideration. But for me, he is currently the best striker in the world, and proved it again. In that match that you alluded to with some phenomenal finishes. But he was, I think Bayern Munich have got some amazing players, and they're still. I still think they'll win the Bundesliga. That seems like a safe bet every year, and also they are my tip for the Champions League as well. As long as they can keep Lewandowski fit, I think they will win the Champions League, because I think as a team they're better than PSG.
What about Borussia Dortmund? Do you think that the reason Sancho is a really big loss to them? Because I could tell you for a fact that Haaland could win that league for them by himself.
Yes, Erling Haaland.
Also, I'll ask you. I just while I'm on that, do you think he'll be good? Do you think he'll be in Manchester next season?
I wouldn't like to say that at the moment, because these rumours of Real Madrid are quite ominous. And if he feels like that will be the challenge that he wants, then we can't stop him. But he's got to come to United. United have got to be in for him when Cavani goes, next summer, because he just is generational striker. There is no other striker quite like him in world football. Really.
He couldn't polish the cocky bits like him. Just
Yeah, he's already much better than Romelu Lukaku. He's just because he's got a good first touch. Haaland, yeah, I think, and also he's very good. He's also, he's quite good in big games as well, unlike Lukaku. So yeah, Haaland's just a phenomenal player. Involved in all 5 goals on the weekend with assists and goals, but I think they will slightly miss Sancho. But ultimately, with Borussia Dortmund, they're always reinventing themselves and they're always finding good young talent. They somehow still manage to always churn out, good results and do well. So I'm not anticipating that they'll struggle too much without Sancho. But what I am anticipating is that Erling Haaland will be very upset about the fact that he's lost Jadon Sancho, his best mate, and he'll want to join him next summer.
Oh dear. That's fair enough. So one more final game to speak about before we wrap it up for this week's show. This is a game that I guess was a question that I was specifically asked by our Blue podcast to ask us. How much do you think City will score against Norwich at the Etihad?
Wow.
I'll go 4.
It's difficult though because City again are struggling to score, aren't they? Although it is Norwich, that's the thing. It's kind of like a catch-22 because Norwich have got a diabolical defence, but at the same time City are struggling to finish things. But I will say 5.
5?
just because of how bad Norwich truly are. I think it'd be a smashing.
See while we're on the topics about bad things, how terrible, diabolically bad is that City for a kit, man? Like what George? What is it? It's not a kit. It's like pajamas or a if you would feel disgusted if you seen United wear something like that, wouldn't you?
I already feel disgusted the way United promote all their kits all the time. I thought that there was a Varane post I was going to like on Instagram, but actually it was about the kit, so I took down my like. So yeah, I think it's particularly non-advertised. But yeah, in terms of kits, don't necessarily ask me about those because the United ones I'm not buying any because it is firmly Glazers out.
That's fair. That's perfectly fair. So that does bring the end to the episode here of the Blue podcast. I've really enjoyed this one, George. Obviously, we even going to speak about a tiny bit of League 2 football, which didn't last very long. I think we're going to have to put that up on TikTok or something because it was quite funny. But have you got any final words to say before we wrap it up?
Yep, very enjoyable, Josh, as always. Thank you very much again to the Blue Podcast for having us. And guys, if you are watching, do remember to like, share, and subscribe. Hopefully, growing this wonderful channel as much as possible. And to the person that asked us about Salford City and Swindon, I am going to do a bit more, do some research if you do want us to cover that. So do get in touch. We'll see if we can endeavour to learn a bit more about that particular league even.
Yes, I think I've put a bit of pressure on us for next Thursday when we have to talk about this. We'll actually have to watch the highlights of that game just to have some sort of knowledge. Yes, but I do echo George words. If you guys did enjoy, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the Blue Podcast. As I said, this show is going to be out every week near enough, hopefully. And just can I say, I'm currently playing Microsoft Flight Simulator here at the moment, and we did not crash. We landed successfully. We're literally just pulling up into the terminal here at Glasgow, so success. So it's an all-rounded well night. But anyway, that's it from me and George. And thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you guys next week. Thank you very much.
Why do you let us
hurt one another just for the dollar? Did you lose your heart in the darkness deep in your pocket? No, I don't care of the price I pay. I don't wanna spend my life that way. Tell me, is the pain that you're causing worth what you profit?
Yeah, I know that money don't buy happiness, but buys you more material shit. Been reworking how I think and what it means to be rich. I used to think it meant to flex, so Rolex on my wrist. Feels bad to take more than you give. Lately hate how we live. I never wanna become the things that I hate. With a man in the mirror with laughing spit in my face and tell me that the money is maybe another fake. I've been drowning in my mind and my money's been adding weight. Oh Lord, please save me. I should've known that something man-made couldn't make me. I say I'm making music, or is music what creates me? I never have an answer, same question every day. See, when we pass on, all our things are passed on to the next. Everything we didn't do is everything we regret. Every day we fucking work for this worthless check. If you're not happy, you're forever in debt. You're forever in debt.